Of course, the advent of video technology was around 1980. That's when we started seeing video having come from the film. 16 millimeters, the 8 millimeters, and 35 millimeters. And then the first cassette we saw was the U-matic and VHS. And all those were formats that continued dominating the market until the advent of digital technology. The digital technology came in not as being carried on hard drive, but it would also be done on videotape because you had digital videotapes. And that's when we started seeing the mini DVs, which came in as videotapes, and then so people moved on. And that's where we see we have cameras which have hard drives on them. We have now had portable hard drives and all, so that's it.
My very first audiovisual experience was when my father was a very young kid, I think I was about 10 or something or below, and he bought me a toy. It was something like a binoculars. I'm still looking for it, something like that. It was a binoculars, but when you press, you look through and you press, the pictures would change. And that's when I was amazed. That was my first experience with pictures.
I think I've always had the DJ thing in me because I've always loved music. By my S4 vacation, I'd already become a DJ. Yeah, I could play music, but of course I needed to concentrate on my studies. But S6 vacation is when I finally made up my mind. This is what I want to do in life, which got me into a terrible confrontation with my dad. So he said, no, you've got to go to university. I haven't wasted my time and money, getting you into school right from nursery up to here, and then you're telling me you want to become a professional DJ. So it's either my way or the highway. So unfortunately, I chose the highway.
I started working with UTV in 1986 when Museveni came to power. I was fascinated by film. In the past, you'd take films, 16mm or 8mm, and then you had to take it to Europe to have it developed. Then you bring it before you see. But the most fascinating thing is that you are able to shoot something and you play back in the camera viewfinder and you are able to see yourself. And that was fascinating, that you actually see what you have shot. And that was amazing. At one time, they thought I was big-headed. I was sent to the film unit. The film unit at UTV at that time was considered a defunct department where they dumped all the old reels. And for me, it was something that catapulted me into understanding archiving. So I went into the old films, I would take time looking at them. And of course, during that time, there were so many things happening, and I knew that one time we would need some of that footage. The culture here is that people don't care about archiving, and we don't want to look back into our history. And as a result, we have ended up not learning so many things, and that's it.
Luckily for me, I've always been an archivist. Every opportunity I had for doing an interview like this, people come around, want to record me in the studio doing my own thing. I would always tell them, please make sure you get me a copy of what we've just recorded. So I've got tons of material on VHS of I presenting in the studio in Radio Sanyu, Echitobero, concert, CBS, at Nachivubo Stadium. I've got all that on VHS.
When you talk about conservation of that medium, to be honest, we haven't done well. I used to intern, let's say, we'll call it internship at Uganda Television, which was the first and only TV station. And when they were relocating from Nakasero, which is near State House, to here behind the National Theatre, reels and reels and reels, 16mm, 8mm, you name it, 35mm, were, just being thrown.
I went there and was horrified. I looked at the film that they had kept for long, and nobody was caring about it. I thought of picking it up, I couldn't pick it up. It ended up in the gutters. I don't know where they threw it. So up to that, I always say, I wish I had picked it and gone and picked it. But I kept picking on my own archives.
Preserving our heritage, preserving content, data, anything, you name it, is vital. I watch sometimes, I'm watching BBC, for example, and they're pulling out archives. And they're telling you today in history, so-and-so did this. And you're able to see what happened. Or we have nothing, you know? What? I'm speechless.
In terms of preserving it, I've decided to digitize it. I digitize that and I keep it on hard drive. But also retain the original recordings in there because I have the equipment which I service well. In case I want to go back and play it, I'll play back. I don't want to keep it in the clouds like you imagine that you send it to the clouds. You're actually donating it to people because you have no control over the clouds and somebody will hack into it and you have nothing. So me, I want to remain local and keep my things local, and that's it.
We are organizing an event to commemorate World Audiovisual Day. We want to unveil our audiovisual data kept in museum storage, and the public should be able to access them. And also, we are embarking on digitization of these collections. So how important are these collections? It will be used for showcasing or showing students, pupils, and other people how relevant, where we came from, where we're heading, and where do we want to be after. Secondly, we do research, conduct research activities, and also entertainment. We have recordings, musical recordings from each culture.
So my name is Basile Queclin, and I'm a music researcher and producer, and I'm working now as a freelance curator for the Uganda Museum to do this 3 days exhibit for in preparation for the UNESCO World Day for Audiovisual Heritage. Like one of the main interests, I think for me, is like or hope for this exhibition is not only to present stuff, object from the past and say, this is how it used to be. How interesting is that? I'm like, this is one step, but for me it's not sufficient. Just to have this kind of like a fetishism of the past. What I'm interested is like to be exposed to this kind of like morsels of life from the past. It gives this kind of like mirror effect. To say like, okay, this is how these guys were living. How can they be part of my life today? So basically what we do here is sorting to some of these materials, so the pictures. So this is all the parts of the museum's collection with also like all newspapers you see here. So it's like storytelling from that time, but also like all the reels you can see here.
The biggest thing I would love to see is for the public to have a sense of ownership when it comes to cultural heritage. So we are looking at the public being sort of co-curators in the process and co-creators, because we're not just thinking about what happened in the past, but when you're on TikTok or Instagram, you're documenting the present, and one day it will be history. So just involving them in the creation and in the curation of cultural heritage.
So this exhibition is good. Actually, I would advise people that have the audiovisual materials to actually not throw them away, but keep the exhibition moving so that people are aware of their cultures. There are very many things that are out of stock right now, but if you look at the audiovisual, you could learn that these things were in existence back then in our cultures and also heritage.
Well, Audiovisual Heritage Day, what does it mean to me? To me, it's a meeting point. For once, I've shared my personal album from home, my archives from home, and how I got into photography. So my part as an archivist, as a photographer, as a researcher, is to tell these stories as archives in themselves, but to inspire people to keep those small things in their homes. We are all archivists in one way or the other. You all have museums. Keep those small things for the next generation. Don't just wipe out. So my project explores too. It explores the visual, explores architecture, it explores cinema. What are we doing right now to archive these buildings for the next generation?
Of course, having archives is part of our mandate because we are meant to preserve, we are meant to keep for posterity. So it comes along with all the objectives that we do and in the strategic plan. So, and as such, that means we've been keeping things for 65 years. And that includes, of course, the audio, the visual, and of course the print. Of course, as we speak now, we've been having VHS tapes, but of course we've transitioned from analog to the digital format. And as such, we've been trying to transfer these materials in a system or in a format that can be accessed by everybody.
Welcome to Brim's Heritage Resource Center. Brim's Heritage Resource Center is one of the few resource centers that we have in this country, where we've tried to ensure that we collect and preserve our audio and visual heritage. We want to encourage people not to waste these items in scrap because, first of all, they are valuable. Valuable how? Because they bring back our memories, but also preserving this kind of collection shows that we have existed for quite some time, and Uganda as a whole has a basis to show the kind of evolution of technology we have had within our country. Our conservation efforts are not only situated in this space. What we do is we innovated and got a mechanism of making sure that our museum reaches the entire community. We go to different schools and we participate in other exhibitions as well, like national exhibitions, World Tourism Day and such kind of thing, so that we get these items out of our own space and take them to the people. One thing I think as a country, what we need to do is to ensure that we preserve our heritage. Heritage might not only dwell on the audiovisuals, but everything. Why? A nation that doesn't exhibit its history is no nation. We can only exhibit our history if we preserved it, and this is what we are doing.
I would challenge the different archives to give access to the public, first of all, because I think there is limited access to these different archives. I believe if there is access, naturally, we are inclined to look into our history and wanting to document them, wanting to get inspiration from them.
It starts with us, it starts with whoever is watching this. Preserve, preserve, preserve. That's it. There's no other, I don't have any other words. Preserve, preserve, preserve. Because now we have the phones. Honestly, what reason do you have? What reason do you have not to take that moment, capture it, and keep it?
In order to know where you're going, you've got to know where you're coming from. Yes, I'd like to encourage people not to forget their history and their past. Please always archive. Because now there's so many things now we think about and say, oh, I wish I'd stored my first mobile phone, for example. And also as well in terms of tradition, clothing, everything that is retro, because it's very important for our offspring to know where we came from.
If we could put systems in place, if we could change the curriculums so that people are more interested in their own heritage than the Canadian Pearies and Churchill and everyone else. What about our own cover leg? All these, we would make this like mandatory in the schools. Then maybe people would be more interested in our heritage.
Governments, people, individuals should be passionate about keeping the archives and keep, especially using AV, audiovisual, whatever, because that's where we are. That's where people don't read anymore. They don't want to write. So they won't be relying on visual, especially motion videos, motion pictures, and that's very important. So let's treasure it.
Do you enjoy any of the new technology?
I do. I use a lot of it. But there are some which I don't use. Like, for example, I don't use WhatsApp because I think it's a wastage of time. People get shocked. No, you are not on WhatsApp. I said, yes. But how do you do business? I said, how did I do it where I am? He said, you are not on WhatsApp. I said, yes. I said, I can't. There is this constant reminder. I said, let me see what they have thrown there. You get out of that. It's actually about 1 hour only. The rest, 12 hours, is garbage.